are the voice of trucking.
Welcome to Key Up New York, the official podcast of the Trucking Association of New York. My name is Zach Miller. I am the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Trucking Association of New York, and I'm so honored to be joined today by Senator Roxanne J. Persaud from the 19th Senate District, which covers Southeast Brooklyn and parts of Howard Beach, as well as Kylla Lanier, who is the Deputy Director, Senior Director of External Affairs at TAT, or TAT, which used to be known as Truckers Against Trafficking. Welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great seeing you both.
No, it's my pleasure. And, you know, we typically Key Up New York, we like to start things off with a little bit of an icebreaker. I think, you know, for today, the icebreaker is going to be sort of how you got to where you are right now. So, Senator, I'll start with you. Community advocacy has always been a big part of your career, a big part of your life. What made you decide to take that step to enter elected office?
That's a funny question everyone asks, but I never decided, actually sat down and says, you know, I am going to be an elected official. I was always comfortable working behind the scenes with my political organization, ensuring others are being elevated to the political spaces that they wanted to be. But it so happened that the opportunity came my way and I was asked to do it. And it took a while before I decided, yes, I'm going to do it. Because I thought about all of the things that I had to give up, most of all your privacy, most of all your life, before I decided to do this. And I tell people all the time, if you're going into work for government, make sure that you are doing it for the right reasons. People say, oh, I'm going to be whatever elected official you want to be, because of what they think they can get from it. And that's not so. I tell people, listen, I left a great paying job, a job I loved, to take a pay cut and to have more headaches and aggravation. But I like doing what I do because it's built on what I've done my entire life, and it's helping others. And so I had great family support who said, go ahead, do it. And then here I am, 11 years later, here I am.
And I think, you know, I love that, and I think that's something that people don't quite realize is so many people do give up. Yes, they give up their privacy, which is hard enough, and they give up family time, which is hard enough. But many do give up well-paying careers that they worked really, really hard to get to in the first place. You know, there is a part of sacrifice that comes with public service.
Yes, there is, and so you just have to say, this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I'm going to do, and just forget about everything else. Because if you walk into that space still thinking about all that you've given up and all of you've lost, then you're not in the right space. This is not the position that you should be in. It's focusing. I've decided to be an elected official. Like I said, to tell people I am not a politician. I'm an elected official. They have these negative connotations when you say politician. But I'm an elected official and I like what I'm doing. And the day that I no longer like it, it's the day I know that I'm no longer in the right space. I need to move off.
100%. And Kylla, how about you? When and how did you first get involved with TAT?
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders of TAT. My mom actually sent my sisters and I a book back in 2007 called Not for Sale by David Batstone. And she was like, ladies, you need to read this book. And I know you guys don't know my mom, but you do what she says. So we read the book and I just think it was mind-blowing for us, right? We knew that there was injustice in the world. We were very much justice seekers all in our own right, doing different things. But we didn't realize that slavery still existed. And I was a high school history teacher at the time. And we started at the Civil War. And so I would always tell my students, there were abolitionists in name, like that were just like, it's bad, isn't it? And then there were abolitionists that were like kicking over tables and like losing everything to fight for freedom for people. And that's what you had to do. So now here I'm confronted with this very real reality of human trafficking, right? And I was like, well, am I going to kick over a table or just sit back and say, yes, this is wrong, right? And so at that point, we started our first nonprofit to combat human trafficking globally. And then as we did the research and really started learning from the experts that were already in the field, we sort of narrowed our approach. And my mom actually had the idea of working alongside the trucking industry. She's like, her parents had owned a small motel in El Paso when she was growing up, and most of their clientele were truck drivers. And she's like, most of them are really good guys. If they knew what was happening, they'd do something about it. And from that, TAT was born and quickly became its own 501c3 nonprofit. And we've just grown from there, and it's grown way past our family, obviously, at this point. But that's how we got started.
It's amazing how both of you have a background in education and how you use that to become champions for this issue. And I think you said it really well. Somebody who grew up in and around the trucking industry, a little bit aware. I've heard the term human trafficking. I've heard the term modern day slavery. I can't say that I had the level of expertise to, like you say, kick tables and do something about it until, until I saw the TAT trailer and I saw the TAT training. And that gets us to where we are today as we sit here today recording. It is the middle of January. It is Human Trafficking Prevention Month. I think if you could talk about a little bit what you do during January to raise awareness of this really, really critical issue, and then talk about, I think, some of the statistics that will blow people's minds about where we are today in regards to human trafficking.
Sure. So obviously, there are 50 million people enslaved in the world today. That's predominantly labor trafficking. Then we have sex trafficking, organ trafficking, where people are harvesting organs and selling them on the black market, as well as child soldiers. It is a $236 billion annual industry. And it impacts people in every single one of our states, in every single one of our jurisdictions, both foreign nationals, but also U.S. citizens. And it is really important that we are looking at this problem as a domestic issue as well, and that we are working to protect the most vulnerable among us. And I always like to point out to people, especially in this month when more people are paying attention because it has the buzz around it being National Human Trafficking Prevention Month, everybody wants to believe it's like only in big cities or only somewhere else. But I would just ask, in your communities, rural, suburban, urban, do you have single parent households? Do you have foster youth? Do you have people with substance dependency? Do you have immigrants, documented or undocumented? Do you have people that have just been down on their luck, poverty, things of this nature? All of us have that in our community. And these are some of the vulnerabilities that traffickers are seeking to exploit. I always say it is an everywhere problem, so it's an everybody solution, right? Like all of us have a role to play in combating human trafficking. And during the whole year, but certainly during this month, TAT is out and about around the country, around Canada as well, raising awareness about human trafficking, speaking to reporters. Currently around the US, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance is right now in the middle of their big human trafficking awareness initiative, where the goal is to really blanket the commercial vehicle industry from, East Coast to West Coast and everywhere in between with TAT materials, with presentations about human trafficking and how people can be equipped to identify and report it.
100%. And Senator, you have been a champion on this issue for some time. So, I mean, I think if you can tell the audience when you became aware of this issue and the steps you took to make sure this was a priority for your time in elected office.
Well, so, I never was thought of it as human trafficking. I had seen these young girls doing things that no young girl should be doing. We always I would say, oh my God, these girls are walking the streets, and and you'll see a person who's directing them, and you're like, oh my gosh, they have gotten into this because they are doing XYZ, but I never thought of it as trafficking. And so, and this is way before I became an elected official. I would see these things, and we would talk about it, and I would go to the police precinct and talk about it and say, what are you doing about this? We have to get these people off the street. The city of New York, they did things like, John's School and making sure you're confiscating somebody's vehicle if they caught them doing that. But nothing was actually done with the person who was actually the person who we then realized was being trafficked. And so I decided, I said, how do we change this? And then in my district, when I became the elected official, there was a place called the Penn Track. And anybody who's in this industry knows about it. The federal government, they've come in to talk about it. The city, the state are all talking about it. And so the Penn Track is where you saw young people, not only young girls, but, all people just in general, being used for all kinds of activity. And you would set one Saturday morning, I was at a corner in that area. I'm going to a meeting, and it was very early. And my staff and I were sitting there. And so I saw these two young women coming down the block. And they had nothing on. It's cold in the morning, but the heels were this high. And so as they got closer to my car, I rung the window down and I said to them, I said, ladies, if you need help, I can help you. I can get you out of this. They were very young. The one stopped. The other one kept going. Because I think when I said that, I guess she thought, oh my God. And she stopped. So the other one who kept walking turned back and came to her and said, let's go. And she said to me, we will never need your help. This is what this young lady said. We will never need your help. And so I looked, okay. But then what I realized is that on the other side of the street, a few cars away from me, was a person who was the person directing them. And my staff said to me, we need to get out of here. Right? And then I said, we have got to do something about this. These young people should not be used in this way. This is no way for young people to exist. So I got out of my car, went into my place, because I did not want that person coming over to my car. And so I started working diligently, saying, we have got to do something. And so we started amplifying the conversation about what is happening in human trafficking. Then I had another situation where two young girls, right here, not far from my district office, lived in a housing complex where they disappeared. They were together that evening. They're on social media. They left the house saying they're going to the store, and they disappeared. No one saw them where they went to. And so the police are looking for them. A few days later, they actually found them because they did tracking their social media, their phone, you're pinging the phones on, and they found them. And the police officer said to me, Senator, I will tell you this. These girls are lucky to be alive the way we found them. I said, we have got to start doing something. And then I had another person come to me. Her niece was taken by someone she knew and moved into a situation that she couldn't get out of. But she was lucky that she had a phone that she texted her mom, letting them know. And the mom and the aunt went to the location to try to get her out. And they had a tough time getting, but they got into this place and got her out. So when we saw that, I said, we have to start this conversation. And so we started amplifying, we started asking, who else should we have conversations with? What do we need to do? Do we have to go into the schools? And it should not start only in the high school. I know I'm taking a while, but it should not be, this conversation should only start in high schools. We have got to start very young, with the kids at very young age. And so that's how we started doing it. Then we introduced legislation that says, okay, who are the partners that we need to bring in here so that they can get the message out? And so we said, DMV, DOT, all of these agencies must have put the message out. And so we can work together. And as this month, I have your information. This week, my staff is going around. We have the stacks of posters and all that, going around the nail salons, the barber shops, the grocery stores, all that, putting those posters up to let people know that this is serious. And this is the information someone wants to get out, someone wants to report it. And so I want to thank you for sending those posters that we are sharing. But I want to make sure everyone knows it is everyone's obligation to work to eliminate human trafficking of any kind.
Agreed.
100%. 100%. I would say, for the transportation side of it, why does the transportation sector play such a critical role in this?
Yeah, I would tell you that at any given time, there are more professional drivers on the road than there are law enforcement, right? There's 3 million CDL holders. And then that's not even talking about like transit drivers and bus terminal workers or truck stop, travel plaza employees. They are there. And a lot of traffickers, while movement is not required in human trafficking, oftentimes traffickers do move their victims either to go and meet buyers through just like the public bus system, or they're driving to another location and they're stopping to fuel up with gas, to get snacks, to let people use the restroom, things of that nature. So these are all opportunities to identify a victim. It's an opportunity to see what's going on. And we know that traffickers do exploit their victims at locations where there is a predominantly male base. And so you're thinking about truck stops and rest areas where victims or survivors have reported that that's where some of the places that their traffickers exploited them at. And so again, our efforts always, even from the very beginning, was I might not be able to change the attitudes or the actions of the one buying, but that victim's having to walk past 9 trucks to get into that one truck that's buying. You activate those 9, they make the call, they shut it down, right? And so it was always about creating some action with the passive bystanders, turning them to active participants in disrupting trafficking networks. And that is what TAD has done by the trucking industry coming alongside, now the bus industry coming alongside, the energy industry, and they're just saying, no, we're going to see it, we're going to stop it, we're going to say something.
Yeah, completely. And I think people don't understand exactly how many trucking companies there are just in your neighborhood, in your communities.
Yeah.
For example, the Senator's district has 748 trucking companies right in the district. That represents over 2,000 truck drivers. That's one of the reasons why, TANY and so many trucking groups are proud to sponsor with TAT. And we're so proud to be working together on what we feel is life-saving legislation, that is Senate Bill number 2399A. I think we could just talk about that bill for a little bit, what it does, why it's needed, and why everybody listening needs to jump on and support it.
Well, 2399A is about giving New York, the transportation workforce, the tools they need to help stop trafficking while they're doing their jobs. As you said, Kylla, the trucking industry plays an important part in stopping this. And so we want to make sure we provide them with the necessary tools so that they can help us. They can help law enforcement and trafficking. When you talk about the number of truck companies in my district, yes, we have at any given moment, I can tell you, you go down Stanley Avenue, you see all the trucks lined up. And sometimes, it's just the carriage, not the, and we had an incident where, people were telling us that at night, these trucking beds were used for these activities, right? And someone in the trucking industry is seeing this. And so by them not reporting it, they are part of the problem. So we want them to all understand that you are part of the solution. We are going to give you the necessary tools to make sure you're reporting, make sure you understand what it, to look for the signs that you must look for and all of that. So this is what we wanted to do. During the pandemic, that's the time that trafficking was like, I'm not sure what was happening. All your young kids were being placed in these trailers and trafficked. It was unbelievable. So we want the trucking industry to know, we want you as partners. This is what is it. We want you to know what are the signs, to understand what you're seeing. And if you are not willing to report it, you are part of the problem. That's what this is really about. We want you to make sure that, think about it. If you see something, put in your mind, the first thing should come to you. This is not right. Oh my gosh, do you know, I have a daughter, I have a sister, I have a niece. Would I want them to be going through this? How do I stop it? And so we want to make sure 2399A gives the industry the tools they need and the understanding. And if I can touch on something else, there was a report about a month ago, I think the end of November into December, was multiple parts that was talking about trafficking. And it talked about, and they did the tri-state area. And they were going to service places where people were talking, not knowing that there were laws and there was places where you should be reporting incidents of suspected trafficking, right? You just have to suspect it. You don't have to say it is definitely happening. You just have to see the signs and report it before it gets to that point of sale. Because remember, trafficking, it's a commodity. And if you put it as a limit to commodity, there is no sale. Right? And this is what we want the trucking industry to help us with.
Kylla, is there similar legislation elsewhere around the country?
Yes, we have a similar legislation that we've helped or we've supported in about 15 states. And so it's been really exciting to see this type of education be required at CDL training schools. So anywhere that is instructing, this is just an easy push and play, right? It's a already prepackaged 20-minute video. There's a quiz attached to it for, accountability on absorbing the information. Our wallet cards are free that has indicators. It's just a good personal little reminder that they can carry around with them. So all of that is easily sent to all of these training schools. And what I really love about it, and it's hard to quantify because how do you quantify something that's not happening? But when I'll be honest, I mean, I've been doing TAT for the 16 years that we've been in existence. And when I used to go to trucking shows early on, when the video was just being circulated with companies and with drivers, you'd have these truck drivers come up to you sobbing, like sobbing, because they had purchased commercial sex acts thinking that it was a by choice profession, that these people wanted to be out there and they were providing a service when they were lonely and away from the road. And then they saw the video and they are sobbing and they're like, I didn't know, I didn't know. And it's like, well, now you do, and now you do better, right? And so you think about it at the CDL school level, it's that next generation of drivers that won't have to learn after the fact. They're learning before they ever hit the road. And so they're already sort of like keyed into, hey, if I see prostitution taking place, it is most likely sex trafficking. If I see these types of signs, I should go ahead and report it. So you don't have to have that regret that we've seen in some drivers that, participated in something that we've culturally said, oh, victimless crime and all of these things that are just wrong, they're just wrong. They won't have to have those regrets. Will be decreasing demand for commercial sex through this education.
And that is the great thing about it, you know. And I just want to say publicly, thank you for working with my team, so that we can get, you know, we needed to make the changes, and we were grateful. We were grateful, you know, that for all the suggestions you made, and everybody. I think now everyone is on board with the suggestions and the changes that were made, and we're hopeful that we are going to introduce this early. It's introduced, but that is going to come to the floor early, and both houses will be able to pass it, and the governor will sign it this year. So again, I want to say thank you, because it's been a rough road trying to get to this point. You know, people, the conversation. You're right. There are many people who don't understand that prostitution, most of it, it's not voluntary.
Right.
People think it's just like, oh my God, oh, that's the person who's a drug addict and they're just doing this to get, you know, to get some money, to, you know, whatever. No, many of the people who are in that industry are forced into it. And so the money that they're making, it's not going into their pocket either.
Right.
Someone else is benefiting from this, and someone is controlling them. And so I want to make sure I say thank you for working with us. And, you know, we're trying to get it over the finish line early in this session.
Well, we thank you for sponsoring it and
Yes.
for having the leadership to do this, and we will support in every way we can.
100%. And Senator, to that point, for individuals, you know, New York State residents who are listening to this, what can they do to help support this bill and get it over the finish line?
I think, you know, it's calling the governor's office to make sure they understand the importance of signing this legislation into law, calling the leadership offices of both houses and letting them know how they feel, talk about the experiences, what they're seeing in their districts. You know, particularly, I want the people in my district to amplify what I talk about. I stood on the Senate floor. Some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle were not supporting, you know, when we were talking about it. And I said, I want you to come walk along the Penn track and see what happens. See what school children have to see every day on their way to school. They're coming out of their school building or going in early in the morning, and these are the things that they are seeing. Talk about that. I said, I want you to see that, and then you can tell me if this is right. Would you want this occurring in your backyard and the people in your community going through this? It is not right. We want to make sure that we have communities where it's safe. I want to see the data. We will say, human trafficking, what's that? That's what I want to see. The data will say that. I'm like, oh, please, we eliminated that 20 years ago. That doesn't happen. That's what I want to hear. You know, I remember going to a conference, and when they were talking about the trucking, the human trafficking pipeline along the trucking routes, and they're talking about, you know, along the route that carries oil, right? And the amount of trafficking along that people don't know about, the isolated communities that people think, oh, trafficking doesn't happen there.
Mhm.
When they talked about, you know, Alaska and trafficking, people being trafficked and then we're like, what are you talking about? Because we don't hear about this in the media. Trafficking is not spoken about on a daily basis, and it's not a part of the highlight reel when the media is having the conversations about someone disappearing. Well, every time someone's disappearing, a young girl or a young boy, I think they should have it. The PSA should come on right after that and say, we want you to know this may be linked to human trafficking. Look, and this is what human trafficking. These are the signs. Make sure you're vigilant. That's what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, to the TANY members who are listening to this, you know, this bill is a major focus for our lobby day efforts. It is March 24th. So if you are able to join us in Albany, please do so, and please help advocate for this bill. I do want to say, so, you know, I think everybody who listens knows we have a government affairs committee at the Trucking Association, and on our last meeting, you know, the first meeting of 2026, we laid out our agenda and, you know, what we're supportive of, what we're opposed to, the whole thing. And at the end of the meeting, there's a woman who got involved with the association over the last year and a half, and she said, you know, there are challenges in being a woman working in this male-dominated field. I enjoy it, but there are certainly challenges. And she just said how appreciative she is that the Government Affairs Committee picked up this issue and we're championing it. And, you know, that I got a little bit emotional about that. And I think, you know, it is important to remember the responsibility that we do have for our communities, for our society, and to just take some time and say, hey, this is not just is it just a common sense piece of legislation. This saves lives. This has impact. And I can take some time out of my day to let the other elected officials know this is really important and you should support it.
Yeah. And so we have to make sure that we're supporting the women in the trucking industry because they really do feel alone. And they feel that there's no one for them to speak to or speak with. And so we really have to make sure we're supporting them and making sure they understand that their voices are being heard.
100%. And that's another one of our big goals in 2026. And hopefully we get this wrapped up early on in session and we can move to these other you know, important agenda items. Thank you both so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for your leadership and your work on this issue. It goes a long way, and you know, we'd never be able to get things like this done without your vision and your championing it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both. Thank you very much. I just want to remind everyone that ending human trafficking requires everyone's intervention, everyone coming together and working so that we can eliminate it. So again, thank you very much.
100%. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you next time on Key Up New York.